Okay, for the sake of time, I think we can start now. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's session of the Alive Learning Forum. For those of you joining for the first time, the Alive Learning Forum offers a safe and inclusive space for collective learning, knowledge exchange, and capacity sharing in the field of living evidence synthesis. We are an extension of Alive, which is the Alliance for Living Evidence Synthesis. In today's session, we will be focusing on relationships and living evidence partnerships. And the relationship component is a critical aspect of partnerships, let alone living evidence partnership. We will start with a presentation by our esteemed speaker, Dr. Kelly Dickson. This will be followed by breakout sessions where we will deep dive into some of the key themes emerging from the presentation, followed by large group discussions. We will then conclude with next steps or implications and close with reminders about the upcoming session. And just a reminder that this session is designed to be participatory and engaging, so please feel free to ask your questions, reflect, provide comments anytime throughout the presentation. And just a brief background about myself. So my name is Rasha Fadlallah, and I'm based at the American University of Beirut in Lebanon. I am the Chief Scientific Officer at the Knowledge to Policy Center, which is a WHO collaborating center for evidence-informed policy and practice. I am also a co-founder of the Center for Systematic Reviews on Health Policy and Systems Research. I also served as the Alive Council member. It's a pleasure to be co-chairing today's session along with my colleague Fred. Fred, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Rasha, and hello to everybody meeting us today.
So, and the next slide, please.
Yeah. So I guess my mini bio will appear right now. Exactly. So I'm based in Brazil, in São Paulo. Have a master's degree in public policy management and some experience in working with monitoring, evaluation, and MEL frameworks for the UN system in general and also for the evidence synthesis community. Previously, I've worked in communities that bridge evidence to policy in Brazil and Latin America through the Brazilian Coalition for Evidence and the Evidence Hub for Latin America and the Caribbean. It's nice to be with you today.
Thank you, Fred. So just few housekeeping rules to help us make the session a success. Please keep microphones off until invited to unmute. The session is being recorded and it will be shared online. So we have an Alive YouTube where you can even look at all previous sessions that have been held. You have all been added to our mailing list for future events. You can unsubscribe from that list at any time, although we hope you don't. And of course, if you have any queries about this or any of the forum session, you can contact us at the email below, hello@aliveevidence.org. And finally, for those who are not very familiar or comfortable with the English language, we have provided worldly translation. So you can click on the link, which appears at the top right corner of your screen, and choose your preferred language from the list. So just to go to, as I mentioned earlier, today's session will be focusing on relationships and living evidence partnership. So by the end of the session, we hope that participants will have reflected on the relational dimensions of collaborating to produce research and evidence partnership. They would have identified practices and capacities that can support research and collaboration, shared any experiences of relational challenges or ruptures in research collaborations, and explored what helps or hinders such relationship, and of course considered what institutional mechanisms and or research team practices support effective living evidence partnership. And hopefully you would begin to explore what it means to build relational capacity in and across living evidence partnership. So with that, I would like to hand over to Fred to introduce our speaker for today's session.
Thank you. Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kelly Dickson. We've had the pleasure of having her assistance at the Brazilian Coalition for evidence previously. But beside being an incredible aid to our local efforts, Dr. Dickson is an associate professor in global health and well-being and an integrative psychotherapist in clinical practice at the UCL, University College of London. She has worked at the Evidence for Policy and Practice Information and Coordination Center, also known as the Epicenter, UCL Social Research Institute, since 2004, where she's been leading systematic reviews and primary research that spans qualitative, quantitative, and participatory methods. One more note on her work, which focuses on biopsychosocial factors shaping people's lived experiences of mental health and well-being, and on institutional mechanisms that support evidence-informed decision-making. She collaborates closely with UK and international partners and is committed to producing knowledge that's contextually grounded and action-oriented. Kelly, I hope this was a good presentation, and now I'll pass the mic on to you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Lovely to see you again, Frederick. How do I move the... Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, so thank you for that warm introduction, and I'm really happy to be here, and I'm happy you're all joining us. So as said, I'm just going to talk a little bit about relationships and living evidence partnerships and what it means to be relational when we're doing our research. So, as said, I'm bringing two perspectives today. There's very much the researcher, the person who does evidence synthesis and lots of different types of systematic reviews. And in one of my roles, I provide methodological support to review teams across different countries to kind of produce evidence. And it was in that role that somebody once called me an epitherapist. And that's what got me thinking about that I'm not just providing methodological support, I'm also supporting people how to navigate how they do the research and the relationship with the funder, policymaker, and the wider context. As a therapist, I also see the similarities where every session can feel like new data that needs to be synthesized in order to support a person understand who they are and live their life more holistically. So just zooming out a little bit and thinking about these perspectives, just to say that I think about knowledge production or evidence synthesis as a form of mode 2 knowledge production. And by that, what I mean is that evidence synthesis systematic reviews are context driven. You have to understand that they're commissioned within a particular context, and often they are co-produced, so they are inherently relational, and they're orientated towards use. So we do review so that they will be used. And we can think about the variation in what we do, all the different types of reviews, all the different types of evidence that we might produce, the methods for that, and the context, as I said, and also how we do it. So we have theories around collaboration and participation and how best to mobilize knowledge and what types of outputs. And then alongside that, I think about the institutional mechanisms. So the organization in which you might be doing that research, how it's supporting you or how it's hindering you. And alongside that, those relational skills which enable what we do. Without that, we wouldn't be able to do the research or collaborate. So yeah, so just building on from that, really, just that I think that we have explicit methods for theory and methods around how we do research, collaboration, dissemination, and we can name those institutional support mechanisms that we need. And we're often aware when they're not there as well. But I think sometimes the relational element, we may reflect on it. We might think about, oh, I really like working with this person in this team when the funding is like this. And I find it easier when we work in a particular way, but that can often be more implicit. So the relational skills are often what is our capacity to navigate the interpersonal dynamics that is sustaining that collaboration or sustaining that work. So this is just adding a little bit more detail here about what I mean by relational processes in partnerships. So the first thing we can think about it in terms of how do we even become aware of how we're relating and how that might be impacting. So if you take an example of being in a group, maybe there's 2, maybe there's 12 people, who is talking more? Who is talking less is one example. What happens when the conversation goes a particular way, and why might that be happening? Within that, we can often think about how we may navigate disagreements or tensions. So, for example, it might be assumed that everybody is taking a pull approach, to evidence use, that we are responsive. We're a responsive organization who respond to policymakers' need, and then we'll produce that evidence. But actually, you find that you're working with people that are thinking more of it as a push model. They don't want to be as collaborative as you assume you are, and that can have implications for the way in which you're doing the research, the way in which you might want to decide how you're going to generate an output of that research. So if there are those tensions, how do you navigate them? How do you come to from a point of disagreement to agreement? And then also within that, oh, sorry, Nick. Yeah, sorry, just quickly at the end there, just to say that also thinking about the psychological safety. So is there an environment where you feel that you can talk about these difficulties? Thank you. So I was thinking, what would be a helpful framework? There is frameworks around communication skills that's often related to leadership. It can be very similar. And I came across this model, which is about emotional intelligence, EQ. And it has these 5 skills that I thought are very helpful. And the first one is self-awareness. And we think about reflexivity when we do our research, but in this context is thinking about, am I aware of how I'm doing the research and what I'm doing, how it's impacting me, and am I aware of how I'm working within this team or in this setting? Even it may not even be a team. And within that, how we regulate our emotions. So if we're feeling irritated, if we're feeling excited, how are we feeling, how are we regulating those feelings? I think empathy is very important, and particularly all of these are important to the Alive mission, but I think empathy is a big one because it's about thinking of being able to see things from another person's point of view, and the collaborative element of Alive, and like really needing to be able to see where somebody else might be coming from. And the social skills, yeah, how do we articulate? If there is a rupture, if there is difficulty, how do we repair that? How do we in navigating those disagreements, how do we go about building that relationship if something has gone wrong? And all of this speaks to how we stay motivated within the work. I'm sure we can all think of examples where, when the team cohesiveness, when the funders or policymakers or other collaborations that you're working with, when it's in alignment, that motivation is really there to get the work done, and when it isn't. Yeah, so that was my introduction. I'm open to questions before we move into the next slide in terms of the breakout rooms.
Thank you, Kelly, for the insightful presentation. And I think what stood out to me was how you brought attention to the explicit versus implicit dimension of partnerships. And it's true that as evidence synthesis producers, we often focus on the explicit aspects, and I'm guilty of that as well. So the technical pieces, the outputs, and we forget the implicit or the relational dimensions, such as the trust, the tensions, the empathy, the repair work that often get overlooked, but are crucial to how we work and eventually how we succeed in achieving what we want. And I also appreciate your reminder that relational ruptures aren't necessarily signs of failures, but they are actually normal and expected in partnerships. And the key is not how to avoid them, but how to acknowledge and navigate them. And finally, the idea that relational capacity, it's not about personal skills. So the framework demonstrates nicely the relational skills that we should have in place, but I think what resonated also with me was how we can build together the relational capacity over time with the right habits and the right kind of institutional backing and support. So this is something that resonated with me. And with that, we can open the floor for quick questions and answers from the audience before we move into the breakout session. So please feel free to raise your hands or to post your questions, your comments, or reflections in the comment box. So I'm just going to check if we have any comments in the chat box. Oh, we have Ronald. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thanks, Kelly. I just wanted to know how you deal with the kind of big brother, power dynamics, especially if you are working in consortium-based, partnerships.
I think that's a big question. I can't claim to have the answer there, but I think that going back to that wheel, first of all, bringing in that awareness. So being able to name what that power dynamic is, and not doing that alone. So not sitting with something by yourself, but going back to your team and having a trusted person, an ally, to sort of talk it through. Okay, what is the power dynamic here? What are the implications of that power dynamic? Where can we identify our agency as a collective, and then think about, okay, what outcome do we want to achieve here, and how is the best way to go about it? Because I think a lot of these things are about problem solving, and remembering something. It goes back to also the empathy, to think, okay, what's happening for the other person? Why is there this power dynamic? Is it about a misalignment in the agendas? Is it about that they want to get that outcome they want, and it's not in agreement? So it's really being able to name what that power dynamic is. Just
Thank you,
I
Kelly.
think it's a good example, because often we talk about power dynamics, but we don't explicitly name, or what is the power? What is it? What is exactly happening there?
Thank you, Kelly. Sushitra, you had your hand raised. Please feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, hi. This is so interesting, and I'm sorry about the.
Oh, you muted yourself.
Sushitra, you're unmuted.
Yeah, you
Can
muted
you hear me
yourself.
now?
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can hear you now. Sushitra, we can't hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is really interesting, and in the context of Alive and what we wish to accomplish, which is partnership building, sharing of resources, are you talking about the dynamics and the psychological safety that exists within a specific team that's been working together at an institution, or things that need to get built when we start these cross-institutional collaborations across different countries? There'll need to be cultural competence and trust, and I guess the power dynamic may be more if it's like a more resourceful group versus one with less resources. So I think in each situation, considerations are different. So how should we approach this?
Yeah, so I think it can apply to both. And I think that if there are issues within the individual team, that may translate then when you take that team and do cross collaboration. I think in the context of live, I think the first thing is that you have that value in the beginning and you're naming that value of collaboration and wanting to have that trust. So I think that is the first step. So it's kind of like naming, okay, what is the core value, the core relational value that we want to have, or a few of them, and really actively building them and seeing that you're probably already doing it, so it's already happening. I mean, at the beginning of the talk here, it was about like the safety in the learning here, so you're already setting that level to say, okay, this is a safe space that we can ask questions and we can explore things. So sometimes it's because it is implicit, there isn't an issue, it just carries on, it's fine. And does that, but I think that it's important. Sometimes it happens. One of the things I've noticed is that after you've had a meeting, once you've done collaboration, you have that debrief. Oh, how did you think that go? Or I really like this. And it can be the work, but it can also be the process. That is where your insight is coming from. Sometimes it can come in criticism. Oh, did you know when that person kind of things, like, this kind of element. So that's giving you that self-awareness, that really important information there on how you think things are going relationally, and then being able to link that then to, okay, how does that change how I feel about how we're doing the work, or if I think that that's going to lead to a positive or a difficulty with the final outcome, the goal of the collaboration.
Thank you, Kelly. So let me check if we have any further comments, questions, or reflection from the group.
Oh, somebody has said, how do you deal with social media and the practice of misinformation in the relationship? That I'm not sure. I'll open that up. I'm not sure I entirely understand what that looks like, how social media and misinformation is impacting things.
It's a learning process, but it's certainly a critical question that we can all reflect upon moving forward. And no, but great, and thanks Kelly, and thanks everyone for the great questions. I think we can now move into the small group discussions where the audience can connect with each other and we can go deeper into some of the key themes that emerged from your presentation. And so given the size of the group, I suggest splitting into 3 groups perhaps, and we can have roughly 5 to 6 individuals in each group, so you can self-select. So I don't know if we have the rooms ready. Can we? Okay. So let's limit it to 3 rooms. And feel free to join any of the 3 rooms. And once you're in your group, we want you to share a personal example or experience of a relational success or failure you have encountered as part of your work in the evidence synthesis partnership. And then to identify those key relational skills or practices that helped or hindered that relationship. If you haven't actually been involved in any partnership, you can briefly or generally reflect on those skills that might be needed. And finally, we want you to consider the key institutional supports needed to build relational capacity. So we have those in the presentation. I don't know if it would be helpful to share the presentation so that the audience can see them. So can we share the presentation so they can see the questions? Okay, so I'm posting them in the chat box as well. So
we're going to go with Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so share a personal example or experience, identify key relational skills or practices that helped or hindered that relationship, and consider the key institutional supports needed. And we have also a link to Miru board if so this is an adds-on for those who would like to plug in their ideas in the Miru board so that we can later walk you through the Miru board. And certainly we would like you to nominate someone to summarize the key messages from your group to the broader group later on. Okay, so please feel free to join any of the first 3 rooms, room 1, 2, or 3. You will not be assigned, you can join any of the 3 rooms, and each room will be focusing on the same themes. So share a personal experience, identify the key relational skills, and consider the key institutional supports that might be needed to build relational capacity. So you will have 15 minutes to discuss about these issues in your groups, and then we will have another 15 minutes for broader deliberation to identify key emerging themes. If you have any problem joining any of the rooms, please let us know, because I can see there's only one person who have joined. Okay, great.
So I see we have 4 rooms. Maybe just suggest we keep to room 1, 2, and 4
Yeah,
as the rooms that already have people in them. And I guess we'll just make sure each one of you gets into a breakout room, and then we'll split up to meet you there.
that
Or
was
just assign who will be speaking.
Yeah.
And apologies for interrupting some of you. I know I was in one of the groups and the speaker was speaking, so we were automatically brought back here, but certainly rich and insightful discussions. And I will now give the room for Kelly to walk us through the reflections and key emerging themes from the different groups.
Thank you, Rasha. Well, I'm handing it back, so it would be great to hear from room 1. I hope the conversation was rich, and I hope the relational dynamics in the breakout room were also good. So it would be great to hear from what came up for you. And it's fine if it doesn't fit those boxes, just share, just share. Ah, Karen, nice to see you.
I'll take this role. And yeah, but just, the basis for this think about relational is time, huh? It's probably time is really what we need at any level. But what we discussed in our group was about like having always like a good leadership. Like that would be kind of key to ensure that we reach the objective, that everybody is involved in a way or another, that there is like some guidance. That's very important. The second point that we've discussed with about contribution, collectiveness, how everyone contribute at his own level, but contribute and make his organization, institution contribute to this collaboration and bring something to this, relational system somehow. So not only at individual level, but institutional level. That's very important as well. And that's also coming back to the leadership, why leadership is important, because you have so many different people and culture and language around, in this system, that you really need someone who is able to make like the link between all of the individuals and expertise. And the third point was about also knowledge translation, how you from the data collection, the analysis, and the result, you bring like you translate this into knowledge that can be that could be like understandable and appropriate by others as well. That's part of it.
Thank you, Karen.
Did I translate it? Did I translate our knowledge well?
Yes, very well. I had presented for the group a work from an MSc student on cardiovascular in climateric women, and the end result is to produce information for patients to learn about this issue. So that's the knowledge translation that Karian has highlighted.
Thank you, Anton. Shall we go to group 2? If you'd like to share.
Sure, I can share a little bit from our room. So we talked about a little bit some of the key ingredients for success when it comes to building partnerships. One being leadership buy-in, which can really sort of make or break a partnership in a lot of ways on any end of a partnership. And then we also talked about having frequent and open channels of communication between partners and doing that in both formal ways. So for example, by setting up regular meetings, but also really having more of those informal channels of communication for the quick questions, really enabling that sort of frequent communication. And then some of the challenges that at least I'll say that I have faced in my own work. So one is navigating turnover on especially longer term partnerships. So what do you do when you sort of put the time and effort into building a relationship with one particular person or group of people and then they're no longer there? And how do you make the effort to, even when you're midway through a project, continue that important work of relationship building? And then two, sort of navigating getting funder buy-in for the importance of building relationships. And then maybe a third one that we started to surface at the end was really on thinking about how you choose the right partners and making that a core part of the process as well, which is something that can be challenging in the best circumstances.
Can I ask a question back? Sorry, not to put you on the spot, but like when you say the right partners and why it's challenging, anything to add there, or just leave that there?
It just came up like right at the very end after we got the message for the come back to the main room.
Okay.
So I think maybe one thing I would say is it is important to make sure that I think you have some base level of the same goals and that you really want to get the same outcomes from your project. I think if you're not aligned on that from the start, not to say that you shouldn't pursue a partnership, but it just might make the process much more challenging.
Thank you. So helpful. There wasn't a room 3, was there? So we go straight to room 4. Love to hear from you. You're psychologically safe, okay? Don't be hesitant.
I think that a lot of the themes sort of resonate that have been discussed resonated through our team as well. The need for the environment to be one that that fosters trust and makes people be open, and then the leadership, and also what the driving force of the institution is in a place where it's just profit driven, may be different from a more academic setting.
Thank you. Should we go to the... So I have been making notes. So what stands up to me is similar to what I said at the beginning. We can't really think about the relational skills without thinking about the institutional mechanisms. And the key things that came out was around the values that those shared values that you have, and the leadership embodying those values. And then from there, you have kind of the creating the mechanisms for which that relational work can happen. So one of the things Millie mentioned was about that communication, that informal communication channels. And then I think Karen started at the beginning time she said we need time for this, and I think that is often one of the biggest, can be one of the biggest blocks when you're in the process of doing the work. You may not necessarily feel that you have the time to be able to sit back and reflect on how you're doing that work. But if you build that in at the beginning around thinking about what are our goals and the alignment at the start, then that can help things going forward. So that's my quick summary. If anybody else wants to add, super helpful.
I could maybe add one thing a bit on my personal reflections as well. I realized that all three groups mentioned leadership, right? And I keep on thinking about how if you have leadership that values the importance of relationships on the results and the objectives of the project, I mean, you're set, right? That's a really good start. And if not, right, what do we do if not? And one of the key words, Kelly, that you brought to your presentation that keeps resonating is naming, right? Naming the challenges and how naming relational challenges might be part of the problem, right? So I'm dealing with this project where our objective is putting people with different perspectives on a certain topic together, right? So this is an objective of ours. Our objective is uniting people with different perspectives. But so we've named the diversity of perspectives as an objective, and we understand that this will require extra resources, right? In terms of what to do with the difference of perspectives. Not that we want to unite them in one only one, but acknowledging and managing the relationships and finding people who are willing to unite, knowing perspectives of diverse, this will cost us resources. But because of the objectives, we're available to prioritize these resources. I mean, I'm trying to get how do we make formal agreements, right? To put relationships on priorities of the project and not just something that some people who are a bit more sensitive will catch up on and others might just try and just
Yeah,
go through.
yeah, I understand. I think you do. I know we're close to time, so you've just hit on something that came into my mind there, which was about when we produce evidence for policy, and there's a commitment to co-producing that with people with lived experience. How do we navigate that tension? Because we need to build relationships with people to co-produce. We need to invest in them and the time, and that requires resource, and resource speaks to time. But if we're going to do that, we have to acknowledge that that is a relational activity, that in order to build that trust, in order to build those channels of communication, we need to invest in, if we're going to do that co-production, and we're going to do it well. Otherwise it becomes tokenistic. Yes, Ayrton's put. I wanted to say that there is research on this as well. I haven't brought that in because I wanted to hear from everybody. But yeah, there is research backing the discussions that we've had today. I'm going to hand it back over because I know we've got 5 minutes and you have things to
No,
share.
thank you, Kelly, and thank you everyone for these insightful and inspiring discussions. And I will not add to what you, Kelly, or Fred have said. So it's very clear that there's strong recognition that relationships aren't just the background, or they shouldn't be the background or implicitly recognized in our work, but we should try to explicitly and deliberately integrate them as part and parcel of the work we do. And I think you touched upon an important point, Kelly, where it's not only about the skills, but also the institutional support and environment that is needed to facilitate and sustain these relational skills. And so I will give it over to Fred to walk us through the next steps, or the so what of our presentation before we wrap up. Fred, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think I'm satisfied. I think we can go to the closing slides. Okay, thank you very much. So with this,
Yeah,
we're going to share a survey, a feedback survey on how you thought of this last discussion. I believe it should pop up for you. Precious, please tell me if this is working out. I haven't seen it pop up yet on our screen.
Just a second. It's coming.
Okay. Great. Okay, so you probably will have seen a separate window popping up. Has 5 brief questions.
You can put your thumbs up if you finished or completed the survey so we can know. Great. Thank you, Ruth. So Precious, will the results be automatically displayed now, or will we share them later on?
We can share them later on.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that seems great. I'm wondering if we're ready to close. So maybe we can just, while the last people might be finishing up, just pass the slide, inform that great. Yeah, so this is actually what we've just been working on. You've just provided your feedback. We really thought it was interesting to have a poll during this meeting because we've been working together and meeting for 6 months. So we just want to check if the format and the topics we've been approaching are really relevant to you or if we can improve in any way. So we hope you've given this through to us through the feedback poll, but we also have the hello@aliveevidence.org email where you can send any other suggestions and feedbacks. We'll be very thankful to receive that. And
Fred, sorry,
yes.
Fred, Ruth here. Just a couple of quick things. So the survey that people just filled in was feedback on this particular session. There's going to be another survey that's going to come out now that the Alive Learning Forum is 6 months old, just to check it's along the right track. So exactly as you said, what's working, what could be improved, are there particular speakers that you'd like to see, particular topics, or indeed would you like to be a speaker? Is there some work that you're working on that you'd like to share? Is there something that you're finding is going well, or is there a problem that you'd like to work through with the group? Really keen to hear from you all, and that survey will go out in our forthcoming email and also in our newsletter. It would be great if you could fill that in and let us know your thoughts. And then, as Fred said, there is also the hello@aliveevidence.org email there, and feel free at any point just to drop us a line. I was going to say, actually, it was interesting seeing people sharing their own research and publications and that of others in the chat. And I wonder whether if people are working on research related to this topic, if they want to share it with us and we can collate it and share that round with the group afterwards and keep the conversation going.